How y'all doing? Thank you for following this series of videos on overcoming adversity. Now, I wanted to do this part three because I talked a lot in part two about a willingness to give up a position. You know, we talked in part one about the caterpillar and the butterfly story and how for the immature child to know what the right thing was, it needed to inquire, it needed to gain information, it needed to be inspired by something bigger than itself, an adult human being who was able to give to the child the correct perspective. The immature child did not have the perspective of themselves, so they had to turn to a larger source of wisdom, which is the adults, and hopefully that's what we play in the world for our young people, are roles of sources of wisdom. But here's the catch that, that again, that the story talks about, which is the child could not turn to itself to know, with any clarity what was really going on. All the child could do was come from its own personal experiences. We could call that childish or immature, and that's part of what we were seeing now in the times that we live in: inflated entitlement and indulgence, which is the egocentricity and the narcissism and grandiosity. So that's kind of who we are when we're immature, is that we see things from our own perspective, and we often make a mess of things, and we often cause trouble. We often hurt other people because of the perspectives that we have. And let's be honest, our perspectives are skewed by so many things as we grow up in life. So many family of origin things that we experience, so many things in society, from peers, just all over the place. We absorb, distortions about what reality really is. And, that's why we become educated. That's why we aspire to, reading research, well-founded research, and, things from people who have dedicated themselves to seeing things clearly. And of course, that is also, part of what we can find in areas of life that have to do with the relationship and spirituality and the deep purpose and meaning of life. And so we end up turning to wisdom teachers. But of course, not everybody does. And what's most frustrating to me, I guess you could say, in my role as a counselor, is that there are many adults. We might expect that from an immature person, from a young person, but for us adults, that's probably a little less excusable, because we do live in the information age, and we are surrounded by a tremendous amount of wisdom. But it does seem to be the human experience that this is what we wrestle with. In the caterpillar story, the caterpillar had to wrestle with something that was self-created, that kind of created a containment for itself, and it needed to do that in order to transform into something more beautiful. And that, of course, metaphor is true in all of life, and we human beings also have encased ourselves in something. But it's not going to be physical like that. Most likely, it's going to be mental. It's going to be cognitive. It's going to be about the thoughts and perceptions that we have wedded ourselves to, that we have fused ourselves with. So, and I was suggesting that, that this metaphor, this story, really lends itself to change for us as human beings. People come to see me every day because they want to change. They want to see better results. They want more happiness and love in their family and in their relationships, and they're in distress. And, I often say to people, hey, try this on for size. Probably the distress has to do more with the position that you've taken around this, the thoughts and perspectives that you have, rather than what you think it is. And I used a quote that said, it's really not what you see that's important. It's where you're coming from. It's from where you see it. It's not what you see. It's from where you see it. So this idea of position, again, isn't that true? We talked about, go onto the roof of your house or apartment or whatever, and you'll see things differently than if you were on the ground. Go to the left and you'll see things differently than if you were to go to the right. Jump in your car and travel up a local hill or a mountain, you'll see things very differently than if you were down at the riverbank. Simple, isn't it? That's what Einstein said. Simple, but not simpler. This is where we are, because in order to see things differently, what do we have to do? We have to leave our comfort zone. We have to get out of our position for a little bit. It's always there, but this is the idea, kind of as a counselor and therapist that I offer people, is that I can invite you into a different position so you can see a way through. And hopefully when you're standing where I'm standing and you can see that way through, then you'll just want to stay there yourself. I can't force you to do anything, but I can offer you a different position, a new possibility. And if you could just set yours aside for a moment, come hang out with me, you'd see things differently. And you'd see a better result. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, things would get better. But again, that 4-foot walk across the room into a different position, can feel like a 4,000-mile journey. Some people never make it in their lifetimes. So for those of you who are getting your head around this, and what I'm saying is that, okay, show me, John, tell me what I can do, to find this different position, to attach myself to a discipline or to a wisdom teaching. Because it is super confusing out there. There are so many different voices out there right now, so many different camps, if you will, of psychology and sociology and research. And my gosh, we're just getting bombarded with all sorts of stuff, and it's not always easy to be on the right path, because so many of these paths, you remember, we're in the age of indulgence, and entitlement, and indulgences are always seductive. So people out there are always trying to seduce people like you and me into untrue, into empty, self-serving philosophies and disciplines. I'm not the first to say this. This has been said since the beginning of time. And so we need to learn how to be discerning. So if we're going to grow because we are pursuing a path of wisdom, rather than knowing what path, maybe some of the signs and symptoms, some of the traits of a good path are what we should be looking for. And I just written down a few that I thought I'd speak on. So I was going to say, if you're looking for it, no, I know you're looking for that path. I know you want to be grown up. I know you want to stand in the light of something true and fuse with that. Because you want to be a loving person. You want to be the best leader you can possibly be for your family. You want to be that better person. You want to make that transformation, like the caterpillar into the butterfly. So here's one that could be helpful for you. When picking a source of wisdom for yourself, pick a source that's paradoxical. What we notice, what's noticeable, and this, I'm just going to say it, and again, you can check it all out for yourself, but in all what I call true wisdom teachings, there's a paradoxical component. And I'll say wisdom teachings, but maturity is just this way. And mature people understand the mystery, the powerful mystery in paradox. So what is the paradox? A paradox that we should be looking for? Well, here's one. The more you know, the more you don't know. The more you know, the more you don't know. See, that's different from knowledge. Wisdom is different from knowledge, because we can get knowledge and become full of ourselves. That's not maturity. Any of you know-it-all people? Any of you know highly intellectual people, or they don't even have to be intellectual, but they can just, be spouting off fact after fact about something, and they know all the facts, they know it all. But, you just can't be in relationship with these people. They've gained so much knowledge that they've inflated themselves so much, that you can't be in relationship with them. That's knowledge. That's a downfall of knowledge. Knowledge understood, true knowledge, and I'll say true knowledge understood, leads to the opposite. It leads to humility. So that would be another piece that you want to look at. So you want a wisdom teaching that's paradoxical, that says less is more. Oftentimes, that says the more you know, the more you don't know. See, those are like checks and balances. If you could learn all the wisdom in the world, but you turned out to be arrogant, you would have learned nothing at all. And so the idea that less is more, or that the more you know, the more you don't know, it keeps the human ego, if you will, that immature part of us, what we call earlier in earlier videos, the immature golden child in us, it keeps it disciplined. It keeps it in check. It fuses together two things, if you will, knowledge and humility. The more you know, the more you don't know. That's the sign of true wisdom. So humility is the other piece. Humility, I did a previous video on this. Humility is just, it is like the alchemical catalyst, that equalizes all things. Like Einstein said, as we stand before God, we are all foolish. That's what it's like. Now, a mature person will pursue humility. A mature person pursues humility. How? Well, because a good discipline is also based upon personal accountability and responsibility. So self-reflection, personal accountability, and responsibility. Now, in humility, when you bring humility to that accountability and responsibility, you're going to see a tremendous amount of innocence in there, of generosity, of grace, of tolerance, of patience. That's what humility generates. And it makes personal accountability, if you will, personal reflection, personal accountability, and personal responsibility, it makes that golden, if you will. It makes it doable. I mean, without humility in a society or in a family or in a parent, I mean, imagine if a child has to be accountable to a parent who has no humility, then that's a dangerous environment to be in. When there's no forgiveness, compassion, caring, sensitivity, thoughtfulness, patience, tolerance, all those things are the fruits of humility. When those things don't exist in a family living room or in a marriage relationship or in a friendship or in the community, then accountability and responsibility become extremely risky tasks. But self-reflection, accountability, and responsibility are incredibly important to humility. So, for instance, when we stand in front of a wisdom teaching, let's say part of the wisdom teaching is the more I know, the more I don't know. That's what the wisdom teaching says. If I find myself getting all full of myself, because that's what the wisdom teaching is, like a mirror, it's going to show me where I've lost integrity. It's going to show me where I'm indulgent and immature. And so if I stand in front of this mirror of this wisdom teaching and it reveals this about me, then that's something that I'll want to be accountable for. Like, I won't want to run away from that. I'll want to go, oh, look what was revealed. As I stood before this light or this mirror, it revealed this. Now, because the wisdom teaching is humble, I know that I'm not going to be punished for it or beat up for it or made wrong for it. In fact, I'm going to be honored. I'm going to be celebrated. Because to the adult, mature mind, those are honorable and celebratory. So self-reflection, and accountability and responsibility can generate humility. Then humility itself creates a wonderful environment for further accountability and responsibility. So again, just to recap, 3 things so far. A good wisdom teaching will be paradoxical. It'll rest itself on humility at all times, and it'll highlight personal accountability and responsibility. And here's the last one I want to talk about in this one. It's relational. It's relational. Now, as you can already imagine, if I'm in a discipline that's paradoxical and it rests upon humility and accountability and responsibility, I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to be easier to be around. I'm going to be better in relationship. Somebody might say, well, the way I handle my stress, the way I handle, what I do for self-care is I go to the gym, or somebody might say, I go shopping, that's part of my self-care, or I sit and veg out in front of the TV. Oh, well, okay. Let me ask you, for the folks who might be doing that, let me ask you, if you were watching somebody doing that, is that making them a better person in relationship? Is it making them more generous? Is it making them more sensitive, more affectionate, more tolerant, more patient, more forgiving, show more compassion? Is it creating those fruits? Are you seeing those signs and symptoms? Because if you're not, then question whether your self-care plan, whether your personal discipline is what you think it is. Because it may likely be not. It may likely be an indulgence instead. So being relational, I like to think, also has a lot to do with what science and research has talked about for years and years and years, is that we human beings are wired for relationship. We're wired for relationship. So yes, all my discipline should make me more effective in relationship. But also my wisdom teaching, my wisdom teacher, my discipline should be, if you will, human. And there should be 2 components of that wisdom teaching and wisdom teacher. One, that the source of wisdom comes from a human being. That's what it means to be relational. Because this wisdom teaching and teacher, if you will, is a reflection of what I could be. This is just built into us, folks. This is, when we're little, we look up to people. Even as grown-ups, we look around in the community. There are people that we're impressed by. There are people that we're inspired by. We might call those people, truly, we might call those people people of integrity. Now, we might be, some people might be attracted to, an athlete, for their performance, or a TV show or whatever, but it's not something that I can become myself. Some people might want to, be inspired by, whatever they want. I mean, people are, inspired by buying a new truck. Fine, you're going to feel happy for a little bit, but you know what? You're not a truck, dude. Like you'll never be able to become that because you're just not. You might, aspire to be like an animal. Truth is, you'll never be that. Human beings aspire to human beings. We look up to human beings. And we look to 2 places. One, in terms of how they handle themselves I want to say pragmatically or practically, is the teaching that I'm receiving, did it come from a teacher who was a human being? But more importantly, does the teaching reflect to me, does it show me my divinity? And what I mean by it's that spark of divinity in each and every one of us is what truly makes us valuable. That spark, if you will, is the light of each of us individually and of the world. When every child is born into the world, the fact that they're in a physical body truly doesn't make them special. What makes them special, unique, and sacred is the potential they carry. That divine spark, that sacred potential that's in each and every one of us. And on that basis, that's what makes us, each and every one of us, unique and precious. Otherwise, without it, what would we be? We would be just animals. There would be nothing unique about any of us. And that would be like a huge, regression, if you will, or, to barbaric times, wouldn't it? Where people were just nothing but a commodity. Nothing special about any particular person. So again, when you're looking at that wisdom teaching for a relational component, that wisdom, source of wisdom, coming from a source that displays, that lived out, that embodied both the pain and suffering of humanness, but at the same time the divinity of who we are. Who we are as we stand in that sacred light. So, I think I'll leave that one there. I hope that was helpful. As you're taking a look at, again, a path of becoming mature and growing up, and that it's going to require some giving up of some positions. I mean, because you don't want to stand in no man's land, right? I mean, you want to give some stuff up, but it's kind of like, then you'd be kind of like a, lamb to the slaughter. I mean, you'd be standing in no man's land in this world where we're constantly bombarded with so much that's indulgent and just embedded with half-truths and things. And so we want to become discerning. Because as we were saying, the struggles that we're having can often be from the place that we're standing. And, as life itself has struggles, our ability to be victorious in those struggles also will come from the place that we're standing. So that begs the importance of finding a great place to stand on some rock. And the rock that we stand on isn't us in our consciousness or our ego self. That's a learning that we had a while back, right, in the other videos, which was I can't turn to myself no more than the child could turn to itself to know the truth of a particular situation. I must align myself with, become part of something bigger than myself. So this makes this whole facet of who we are in our human journey probably the most important facet of all of them. Finding that rock to stand on. And so I say, be discerning, make wise choices when it comes to this. Especially important when we're in high levels of distress, because it's just human tendency that when we're stressed out, we become highly susceptible to temptation. This has always been the thing that human beings have wrestled with. The old snake oil salesperson, right? Always showing up just at the right time when people are ailing and they need some kind of fix, and it ends up being, not helpful at all, or it can be poisonous. And so we have to be really discerning. And so I've spoken of 4 elements there that you may want to think about as you're picking your wisdom path. So hope that was helpful again. Thank you for tuning in and subscribing, and I will just keep posting stuff as I get inspired. Take care.